Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this monthly meeting of the Alternative Forum here on April the 28th. We have a very interesting speaker this evening, and he's new to the forum, so I hope you'll give him a very warm welcome. His name is Bahman Yazdanfar. He comes from Persia, or originally Iran. He's been here since 1986. Has an interesting educational background, and well, he'll tell you a little bit about that. He was educated in the medical field. He has done a lot of business consulting here in Canada. He's the type of person who, when a business is in trouble, they will call him in. He'll analyze what the problems are, try to set them right, or organize the rebuilding, and then he moves on. So he has a very interesting background in that regard. He's also right now, for the last couple of years, been a television host, and I was lucky enough to be on his show. He's a great conversationalist, and I can't believe this, but apparently there were even people who gave him a hard time because he had me on, and I was really on my best behavior that night. You've got to believe me. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Bahman Yazdanfar, and he will be talking to you about a number of issues, including something he really appreciates, and that's freedom.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My name is Bahman Yazdanfar. Just Bahman is enough. Some people call me Deadman, Bowman, Bahman, doesn't matter. First of all, Paul, thank you for the introduction. It was my honor you were in my show, by the way, and you were very gentleman. The reason when Paul asked me last month that if I'm interested to come here and talk, I said yes, and with no hesitation. And the reason for that is, like many immigrants in this country, I am an immigrant. But it doesn't mean that I am just blindly accept whatever government brings us to the table and introduces to us. Freedom of speech is a very important issue for me. The reason I am here, and I came here, I didn't come here for better life. I could have better life where I was born. I came here because I did not want anyone or any government tell me what to do, when what to do, and how to do it. I am an individual, I was born free, and I will die free, no matter what. Maybe poor, but I was born free. Now, I notice most of you are mature people here. We don't have younger, I mean the young people like in their 20s or something at least. I'm not offending you because you seem to be younger than you, except the lady there, 11 years old, who was just tagging along. Are you good with a little bit of a story before we get to the core of the matter? Okay, there was once upon a time, long time ago, 44 or 50 years ago, a young man was living in his own country, far, far away from here, from a middle-class family. One day his dad comes to him and said, hey, I want you to become a doctor. The dad sent him to Afghanistan. He went to Afghanistan. As soon as got to Afghanistan, got to start to the class, 5 weeks later, there was a bloody coup d'etat in Afghanistan. Communists came in. So after 10 months, 11 months, he finished the first year. He said, hell with the communists, I'm going back to my country. So he went back to his country. As soon as he got to his country, 2 weeks later, the revolution happened. Then Khomeini and the Muslim mullahs came to the power. Then he said, no. Between the communists, mullahs, going to university, not going to university, certainty, uncertainty, I go back to Afghanistan. So he went back to Afghanistan. During this time, his parent left Iran. His parent left, and he didn't have anyone else. He just coming back and forth to help their family affairs, to make sure they are doing well in Europe, waiting to come to Canada. A couple of years later, the rest of his family immigrated to Canada, but he remained to Afghanistan for 7 years. In that 7 years, there were about 24 coups d'etat, 5 of them successful, 5 different governments. So he saw firsthand how the humans treat each other. the same religion, the same tribe, the same skin, the same color, the same language. They kill each other just for taking the power. Power of a land that does not have much. So after a couple of years, he chose to become agnostic at the age of 21 or 22. It was not welcome in those countries. Because in those countries, say, oh, if you were born Muslim or you were born Christian, you're sentenced to be Christian without your permission. Because your parents put a stamp of one religion on your birth certificate, then you are what you are. With no saying. This young man at that time realized the power of the free will. If you want to have a free will, you have to admit and accept the consequences confronting other people in your society. So he chose to do that. A few years later, he had problem with the governments. No wonder. He had attitude. So back and forth, finally, his mother told him, I want you to join the rest of the family in Canada. So he didn't reluctantly, he came to Canada because the rest of the family were there. The friends don't like him because they say, oh, you have a big mouth. And we are in danger. So they didn't like to have anything to do with him because they felt threatened. So this young man arrived to Canada in 1986. And within a year, he lost his mother to cancer. And then he had conflict of interest with his parents, again, ideology-wise. He didn't want to accept what he was told to do. Doesn't matter if it was from his parent or government or anyone else. This man was a free entity. He left the family, broke, no language, no knowledge of the culture, nothing in hand. His education means nothing for this new society. 30 years later, that man, although that man had an attitude, or some people call him, you have an attitude, because he was outspoken. 30 years later, this man still has nothing, still is fighting, and still has an attitude. And that person is in front of you right now, Mike, it's me. So, everybody has a journey. Everybody has one of these stories. But many people try to put it behind the shadow of inner, or we call it inner shadow. They don't want to bring it to surface. Why? Because they're afraid of their wife, of their husband, they're afraid their children don't get the treatment they deserve. They're afraid they lose their job. Why is it? Why a society such as Canada, who told me you are coming to democracy, provide a situation that you don't have that democracy anymore? Why my government, either is municipal, provincial, or federal, who get my tax, who get my vote, as soon as get to the office, dictates me what to do or what not to do? Why? Now, most Canadians are very polite, decent people. But when it comes to their government, that politeness does not serve them well. Because they don't stand up. And it brings us to the two issues that I am going to talk about after that terrible story. One is the free speech and the right to free speech. I had, for instance, Paul mentioned that Paul came to my program to talk about a kind of the ordeal he went through in the Custom Canada. As soon as that program was broadcast online, I received all sorts of the titles. You're non-white, token non-white, you're Nazi, you're anti-Semitic. Then I wrote an article for a community newspaper called Your World News, because, by the way, main media don't want to publish my articles. I submitted in the past. As soon as I published that, many people came to me and said, or online, they said, you are a racist, anti-Semite, Nazi.
He wants to kill 6 million Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I wrote in my article, I simply addressed the issue of why I cannot open my mouth without being accused of anything. Nothing is in this article talk about Germans, Jews, whites, blacks, or anything like that. I just said if I am a free man, came out of the womb of my mother free, and when I die, nobody give a damn to me where I go, why should I, between these two pivotal points, I have someone else to tell me what I am? As soon as they saw that, as Paul said, I have an online talk show. I send invitation to all elected officials provincially and municipally. In last 2-3 months after this article, and another one of course, most of them, they don't even respond to my email. Previously they used to say, no, not interested, it's conflict of schedule. Now they don't show up. One of the gentlemen's few people who showed up on my program, I call them the most courageous elected officials. Because my show, there is no prepared question, unrehearsed, uncensored, and it is broadcast live. So whoever comes say, you have to have mojo to get there. So one of which was Mr. Jack McLaurin, which is very nice gentleman, decent gentleman, is MPP for Conservative Party, which recently you have heard his name on the paper. I'm not saying that he's being targeted because he was on my show, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has a link to that purpose. So our elected officials, that they take our tax money, have a better life than the rest of us, they go to their parliament or the city hall or the Queen's Park, and they start to take their order from one person, their party leaders. And Canadians who vote them, who pay for them, they just stand there and do nothing, collectively. Individuals like me, there are plenty. But collectively, people do anything. What can we do about this? We have to open up and start from our own neighborhood. We cannot let people, a bunch of gangsters, sit in Queen's Park or Parliament of Canada and deciding the policy and money that it is earned by the people that they go to work from 5 o'clock, they get up in the morning, to be at work 6 or 7 o'clock, put up with the jerk supervisor or manager till end of the day. At the end of the year, when they go, at the end of the 2 weeks, 1/4 or 1/3 of their money is gone, and at the end of the year, they have to do the bookkeeping for the government. The only way that we can do right now, we are the best time in technology-wise. There is Twitter, there is Facebook, there is internet. At least raise your voice. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your colleagues. Tell them what you feel or what you think and what you see. Because if we keep it silent, it stays that way. We have this government in Ontario for the last 13 years. In spite of all of the scandals they did. Why people elect them? So this is the freedom of speech is here, is being suppressed. And my concern personally is, I have been in the coup d'etats, I have witnessed coup d'etats, and I have witnessed the revolution. And in a span of 1 or 2 weeks, the whole country went upside down. And when that moment happens, everything goes wrong. We can see the signs of the oppression from our government. We are seeing the sign of the oppression from their lackeys, like this social justice warrior. They put these groups here and in the pockets. Who knows who pays for their expenses? All of a sudden we have what, Black Lives Matter, or if you walk on the street and you don't like to be homosexual, or you are homophobe. If I say, oh, Islam is not my favorite, you are Islamophobe. If I said, oh, I don't like to hang around in the synagogue, oh, you are anti-Semite. Whatever happens, whatever you do, the first thing is, it's like stamping, like a branding, old days in the farms. Okay, we brand, okay, we put this hurt this side, this hurt this side, and this hurt this side. Which brings me to the issue of the immigration and why it's connected to the immigration. Right now, if you stand up and say, hey, we have 5,000 homeless in Toronto, we are spending more than $200 million of taxpayer each year to keep them on the street. To the bureaucracy, to the city hall, to the employees. And then all of a sudden you haven't resolved 5,000 people's problem for the last 30 years. Now all of a sudden you bring 25,000 people in without even considering how you want to handle it. I am an immigrant. I have no problem against immigration. However, I have serious problem with the irresponsible immigration, that the only outcome of that is that the parties in power use it as a publicity stunt that we did that. And I give you a little bit of historical here. Diefenbaker, from Conservative Party, introduced Bill of Rights in 1960. And then from that, going back and forth, this way, that way, this way, that way, get to the 1982, till it became Charter of Rights in Canada by Trudeau. He took the credit for all of the works is being done before that. Okay, in 1982, there is a charter, there is a freedom of speech, freedom of expression, there is equality of the ethnicity, all of that is fine, very good. In 1988, they passed a legislation, Multiculturalism Act. Now, one would wonder, normal Canadians, ordinary Canadians say, oh, it's a good thing because it is multicultural. Now they can integrate to each other. No, 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 no. That Multiculturalism Act states that they have to be certain amount of the money allocated to certain group to keep their culture. So if you're from Ukraine, if you're from England, if you're from Pakistan, if you're from Iran, so government under this act provides millions of dollars each year, or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the number of people in your ethnic group, for you to promote your culture. So still some people say, what is wrong with that? The problem is, this money goes to only 2 or 3 or 4 people, a small group of people in those ethnic groups, to keep their ethnic group in the ghettoized situation. So at the time of election, Mr. Trudeau, or Mr. Mulcair, or Mr. Harper, when they want to get the vote of the, let's say, East Indian, or Iranian, or Ukrainian, they don't have to go and knock on doors of all of these people. It's too much work for them. They gather a couple of the lunch and dinner, like the one you saw probably on YouTube, that Trudeau is a dancing Indian. And then they pay or allocate certain, or promise to allocate certain amount of money to promote their culture under 1988 Multiculturalism Act. And then those people make sure to keep their own people in darkness, and at the time of the election say, oh no, we had a Trudeau, go and vote Liberals. Or we had Harper, go vote Conservative. Or we had Mulcair, go vote. It's the same way that the union works here. That is the part that I have a problem. When I came to Canada, The only help that I got, half an hour on Welcome House with no English, a woman, a lady in her maybe 45, 50 years old at that time, gave me a list. These are the list of the school. Go there and find a place to for ESL. That was the only help I got. I went and I went to Jones School. I sat there for 3 or 4 days. They took us with the Scarborough Cliff or something like that. I said, that's not English. And plus I wanted to get away from my family because I didn't have any, I was not congruent ideologically. So I started to work in a factory. After medical university, go and sweep the floor in the factory. Now the immigration brings the immigrant here. They provide them with the house, furniture, money, food, healthcare, and I landed, and I came here landed immigrant, by the way. I waited for 1 year in Europe to obtain my landed immigrant. These people get from the middle of the desert, come here and put it here, and then they complain, and then they come and say, oh, you are xenophobic. They are very good at labeling. They should work with the Ford's brother. They have a label company called Decal. So labeling is easy, but the solution, what is the solution? Logically, when I was in medical school, I was learned the first thing in emergency. If a patient came here to the emergency and is bleeding, what is the first thing you do? Stop the bleeding. Then find out what is the remedy. We are bleeding. We are to our eyeballs in debt. We have, in Ontario, we have about 700,000 unemployed people. When I was running in 2011 and prior than that, of course, I put up my pamphlet. One of the ideas that I want to introduce was income guarantee and basic income guarantee. And everybody came to me and said, you're lefty, you're communist. I said, no. Ontario alone, under 4 agencies alone, WSIB, unemployment insurance, disability insurance, and another one, they pay $17.5 billion each year to 1.5 million people. If you divide it to that, it comes $17,000 each. Not to mention amount of the money they spend in the bureaucracy, in their building, in their maintenance, and so on. The reason healthcare is up because people are hopeless, they are poor, they are jobless, there is a gang mentality outside. So all of these monies that they are complaining that we are wasting, with the simple basic income guarantee will be resolved. Because if you have a roof above your head and a basic food and basic transportation to look for a job, even if you don't want to work, maybe you want to use your brain in a creative way. At least you're not on the street to get sick, you're not on the street to kill someone, you're not on the street to steal something and then go to amount of the expenses. 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a very short article, in the form of satire. I wanted to I sent it to the newspapers, they didn't print it. I said to Government of Canada, I need $80,000, please bail me out to start to pay some of my debt and start my business again. And the reason I am asking that, because I am contemplating to do a crime. And the reason is because if I do the crime, I am being get caught because I am amateur in the crime. So it costs you about 100 grand to prosecute me. And if you put me at least 1 year in jail, it costs another 100,000. So it's $200,000. If you give me 80,000, you save 120,000. They didn't even acknowledge they received my short article, let alone to print it. That is the ridicule that we are dealing with. Now, The Canada that I came into was, I was produced a presentation by the ambassador in Belgrade. Oh, democracy, you speak very good. I couldn't speak English. People keep saying, you speak very good. I couldn't speak. Still, I don't speak English well after 30 years. You come to democracy? Yes. Medical school, you need doctor. I came here, they give me middle finger. There you are on your own. Go find a job in the factory, do it, and make sure that your boss pays taxes to us so we can order you more and more and more. I had the member of the Queen's Park sitting with the Mr. McLaren in my show. It is on YouTube. He himself said there is 365,000 rules and regulations in Ontario governing businesses. So if you are selling even lemonade, you are guilty of something. Because I am pretty sure even they don't know what are they. So the immigration and freedom of speech, which come to the freedom of personal freedom, is go hand to hand. It has nothing to do with someone says I am anti-Syrian or anti-Israeli or anti-Irish or anti-German. The point is, stop the bleeding in this city first, in this country first, then start to do that. So that is the part of my presentation, and I hope I don't expect you agree with me. Just Paul asked me to come and just give you my own 10 cents or a penny. Thank you for if you have any questions.
I'm going to make maybe I'll let you have a drink of water, and
oh, sure.
I'm going to make a few announcements, sure. And then we'll call you back. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. And many people who have immigrated to Canada prior to 1990 have similar stories to yours, Bahman. There was a time when people got very, very little. They were simply given an opportunity. In fact, traditionally, that's what immigration to Canada was about. Not a guaranteed standard of living, not accommodation of your weird religion or bizarre dress. You were given an opportunity. And there's a lady here tonight who told me a story as a teenager growing up here in Toronto of something her mother said to her and to her brother. Growing up here in Toronto, they were Germans. And her mother told them not to speak German on the streetcar to each other or to her, to speak English because it was rude to all the other people on the streetcar who were English. What a revolutionary idea. And what do we hear today? Well, if you have to travel a bus or a streetcar, you hear a Tower of Babel of languages, and we, of course, are in secondary place. Anyway, that's the first thing observation I'd like to make. I've got a couple of announcements that I'd like to make, and then I'm going to call Bahman back for questions. First of all, some interesting things happening on the free speech front. We expect by the end of this month, so that's tomorrow, a date will be set for the constitutional challenge in the Arthur Topham BradfordPress.com case. I'll be reporting more on that at the next meeting. In the McCorkle will case, we're still on hold. We're waiting for a three-person panel of the Supreme Court of Canada to decide whether they will hear the appeal. We think our chances have greatly improved because in the Spence case here in Ontario, that's the old Negro preacher who cut one of his daughters out of his will because she'd had a relationship with a white man and had brought forth a mixed-race kid. Anyway, his will was thrown out at the Superior Court, but because of contrary to public policy, etc., but it was reinstated by the Court of Appeal. So there's a contradiction in the McCorkle case in New Brunswick. Their Court of Appeal said upholds the meddling by the courts on the basis of public policy to revoke a will. In Ontario, the Court of Appeals refused to go that way. So there's a contradiction. We think maybe the Supreme Court will want to hear it. On a more local level, and the editor is here tonight, you may want to talk about this as well. Your War News is under even more attack than before. It isn't just a matter of the usual community. Some of the postal workers say they didn't want to deliver it, they were just too offended. Of course, there's been some petitions going up to Ottawa and to Queen's Park. Don't know why they're petitioning Queen's Park. They have no say in it. Bernie Farber, of course, a long-standing enemy of free thought and free speech, was in Now magazine about 2 weeks ago, and he was saying that was very unhappy with the hate squad, that's the thought police, the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force, that they had refused to lay charges against Your War News. So picking up the ball like a relief pitcher, and let's just hope he ends up dishing out a few home runs. Anyways, Richard Warman from Ottawa, famous guy, always in there. Anytime that somebody has an independent thought in this country, Warman seems to be in there wanting to shut him up. I call these people the neo-Puritans. Mean, prune-faced, angry. If you don't agree with me, well, okay, they can't burn you at the stake anymore, but we'll take away your job, we'll fire you, we'll charge you with this, or if we can't charge you, we'll fine you, we won't deliver your mail. You know, this is a really mean spirit, and this is not the Canada I grew up in, and this is not the Canada of the old Red Ensign. I remember, you know, I hate to sound like an old fogey, but I remember a Canada in the 1960s when we celebrated our 100th anniversary, where people were commonly told things like, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you, but you've got a right to your opinion. And they meant that. They didn't agree with you. They thought you were a crackpot or off base or offensive, but you had a right to your opinion. And the price for having a thought different from theirs wasn't to be fired, or the Canada Post wouldn't deliver your mail, or you'll be charged in federal court, or you'll be put in jail. There really was tolerance. But now we have the neo-Puritans, and what do they say? Well, they're for diversity, but not diversity of opinion. They're for tolerance, but not tolerance of any idea different from theirs. And so they're after Your War News big time. And now the latest is Richard Warman, and as promised, he wrote letters to the minister in charge of the post office and to the president of the post office, demanding that they cease delivering Your War News. Why? Well, because it's so they say homophobic, misogynistic, homophobic, misogynistic. It questions. It's anti-religious. Well, anti-religious in the sense that it does not believe in the new religion of Holocaust. And I mean, heck, you can be anti-religious in almost any other way. That's okay. But anyway, so those are some of its sins. It's misogynistic, homophobic. Xenophobic,
anti-Semitic,
Islamophobic,
neo-Nazi,
geez,
Holocaust denier.
And you know, I switch back to the world of the old Red Ensign. People would have said that paper is, well, it's pretty far out, but they've got a right to their opinion. End of story. I mean, I want to go along with their opinion. I mean, I even want to read it. And you what adults used to do if they get paper in the mail that they don't want. Oh, my heart's palpitating. No, I've got to call the police. I've got to call Richard Warman. It used to be, I don't like this. There's the blue box. When in the good old days, we didn't have a blue box. We weren't quite so constipated about having to sort out our garbage. But anyway, that was a mature nation. Look, I don't like these opinions. Fine, they've got a right to their opinion. I don't have to read it. It goes in the blue box. End of story.
they've got their rights, I've got my rights, but not anymore. Now what Richard Borman has done, because apparently Deepak Chopra, not the doctor Deepak, but the head postal guy Deepak, he's deep pockets. He's a, I don't know whether to like Deepak or not. A couple of years ago he said that seniors were, well, they didn't get enough exercise. So that's what, so this idea of having community postal boxes was good. Get all those old geezers up who are working. That's kind of a nice thought when you've got a government-funded car. But anyway, for whatever reason, Deepak Borman has done now is he has gone to the Canadian Human Rights Commission with a complaint against the Canadian government and Canada Post because they are delivering a paper, or they're responsible for delivering a paper which is, let me think, I don't think I have the whole litany, but they're misogynistic, homophobic, deny the new religion, or question the new religion of Holocaust, xenophobic, and all the other phobics. And you know, a mature country would have said, well, look, even if all that's true, so what? They've got a right to their opinion, and you as consumers or readers or people who receive it in the mail have the right to read it if you like, throw it in the garbage if you like. End of story, end of problem. Where's this going to go? It's hard to tell. The mischievous thing about human rights commissions is that their threshold of proof is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but on the balance of probabilities. Now that sounds like you know, a difference without a distinction. I'm afraid it isn't. The balance of probabilities is if the judge thinks there's a little bit more evidence this way than that. Beyond a reasonable doubt is can be no reasonable doubt. Supposing the accused is a shifty-looking person and is seen running away from the scene of a crime, that wouldn't justify a conviction on the basis of beyond a reasonable doubt. It might on the basis of on the balance of probabilities. So whether or not the Human Rights Commission will accept the charge, I think there's a good reason to say basically they have no jurisdiction. Not that they don't have jurisdiction over a Crown Corporation, but the Crown Corporation is obligated to deliver the mail. It doesn't really have an option. If the people pay, and as long as the mail is not a hazardous substance or whatever, they have an obligation to deliver it. That would be the easy way out of this. Whether they will take that or not, I don't know. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Now, I'm not deeply into conspiracies or things like that. Well, maybe a little bit, but I still don't believe the Kennedy story. But anyway, when was this complaint filed? It was filed last Friday. And what was last Friday? It was the 22nd of April. Now that was the full moon. Oh! Maybe that's what made Borman do it. It was also the first day of Passover. Now, I'm not into conspiracies or anything, but and I leave it up to your wisdom to come to any conclusion you might on that. But what happened at Passover? Was that a good feast? I don't know. Not if you're a poor Egyptian. You know the story of Passover? The angel put a mark on the door of every poor Egyptian. The idea was to kind of blackmail them into letting the Israelites go. Why they want to keep them? Hey, that's another story. But anyway, and the angel of death came and killed the firstborn male of every Egyptian. Is that the type of feast you want to have? Is that kind of like Christmas, where you celebrate family and birth and good things like that, or Thanksgiving, where you thank God and the land and your family? I mean, this is weird stuff. Anyway, for whatever value you might put on that, last Friday was the first day of the season of the feast of Passover.
Oh, that's anti-Egyptian.
Pardon?
That's anti-Egyptian.
No, I'm pro-Egyptian. Well, I mean, I don't like any of them, but You may say it's all coincidence, but why didn't Warman go to court the day before, like the 21st, or go yesterday, Monday the 25th?
You should have done it on Hitler's birthday, the 20th.
Well, yeah, well, yes, Hitler's birthday. Well, maybe that would have been bad juju recently. Maybe if he went on the 20th of April to court, the documents might have caught fire in his hands. Anyway, while we might have a bit of a snicker at all this, it really does tell you about the state of Canada today. When a community newspaper draws so much fire and oppression, and the goal, let's be quite clear, the goal really would be to put the editor in prison. They really wanted that paper the editor charged under the hate law. And if they succeed, the editor could face up to 2 years in prison, like our friend Brad Love did. He got 18 months, like Jim Keegstra, like Chief Hennique. The chief actually didn't go to prison, but because Doug won it on appeal. But you're talking about putting a person in prison for nothing more than having a smart aleck sense of humor, and maybe sticking a pin into the bloated egos of some of the powers that be. I mean, really, is this what we came to? Maybe those of you who came from other countries, you only thought you missed North Korea. Maybe that's really where we're heading. Anyway, I'd like to thank you again very much for coming out. Oh, I forgot, the Komagata Maru, the trust fund kid, otherwise known as Justin Trudeau, is going to apologize. What is it about Canadians? We used to be able to walk tall. Now we're going around apologizing for everything. This is the second time. Our former Prime Minister Harper, he apologized for the Komagata Maru and even issued a stab about it a couple of years ago. Well, now Justin is going to apologize again, which probably also means another payout, because well, what good is an apology without laying some money on the table? I mean, once you pleaded guilty, now we're going to discuss the sentence.
Can you tell us what that was? Because I have no idea what it was.
Okay, well, I'd be more than glad to. On the 18th of May, this will be the 102nd anniversary of the arrival in Vancouver of a ship called the Komagata Maru. It was a Japanese registered ship, hence Maru, and it had been hired by a Sikh radical to basically involve itself in what we would call today human trafficking. 376 Indians, most of them Sikhs, had paid for passage to Canada. He'd assured them basically he was going to bust his way into Canada. He thought he had a clever legal argument around our immigration rules. The Dominion government at the time didn't know quite what to do, so they left the Komagata Maru in Vancouver Harbor. They wouldn't let them get off. And then the people aboard that ship turned really quite nasty. At one occasion, 125 police officers and immigration officers tried to board the Komagata Maru. They were driven off by a hail of hunks of metal, bamboo poles being jabbed at them, hunks of coal, and even a couple of gunshots. They know who did it. There was a Sikh aboard that ship who actually tried to assassinate a sitting member of Parliament. We've got a booklet about him, H.H. Stevens, Harry Stevens. Also tried to shoot a man who is an unsung Canadian hero, very unsung, William Hopkinson. I've talked about him before. Hopkinson was a very interesting man. He's he was born of an English soldier in India. He grew up in India, spoke a number of Indian languages flawlessly, including Hindi. And in 1907, he began in the Calcutta Police. In 1907, he came to Canada. He was hired as a translator and as an immigration investigation officer. There was then, as now, a problem with Sikh revolutionaries in Vancouver and also in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Very interesting. Hopkinson also worked for the Americans. And it's also thought he worked with the predecessor of the British Secret Service. Very interesting guy. He went undercover. He could
wouldn't say black on his face, but with the proper headdress, he could pass as an Indian. He infiltrated the radical circles there. He had a number of former Indian Army soldiers among the Indians who were loyal to the British Crown. And he developed a lot of information. Anyway, he developed the information the government used to decide after a couple of months that the Komagata Maru was illegally in the country, and they told them to leave. And in 2 months later, that would be, I guess it was in July, or no, it was early in August in 2014, the one armed naval vessel the Canadian government had on the entire Pacific coast, a little ship called the Rainbow, escorted the Komagata Maru out into international waters, and the captain of the Rainbow said, if you come back into Canadian waters, we'll put you to the bottom of the Straits of Juan de Fuca. Those are the days when we really had leadership. Anyway.
It was 1914.
1914. Anyway, beginning a few years, maybe 20 years ago, the radical Sikhs in Canada said that this was a terrible incident of racism, blah, 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 a black mark on Canada's history, and we need to apologize. Well, they got an apology from Harper, they got another apology from Trudeau. It's disgusting, and I certainly hope, and I'll discuss this with you privately, maybe there's something we can do to make a bit of noise to show that not all Canadians are permanently on their knees. I think the biggest sign of the hypocrisy of this issue is that since the immigration doors were thrown open in 1965, tens of thousands of Sikhs have come to Canada. Now, if we're really that horrible and racist and xenophobic a country, why would they come here? In fact, why do we have the largest Sikh population outside of India? They don't worry about the Komagata Maru all that much, but they just see a weak country led by fools and wankers, like the present Prime Minister.
And lots of benefits.
Oh yeah, and then they'll be able to collect a big pot, just like the Indians did, getting compensated for being educated at the residential schools and the various other groups that have been apologized to. Anyway, thanks for reminding me about this. If you haven't read the Komagata Maru, the story by Bob Jarvis, we've got copies over there. I'm going to pass around something or other for anything you might want to throw in to help us on the free speech case, and I'm going to call Bahman back, and if you'd like to shoot some...
Just before I take your question, a couple of things I wanted to mention because Paul brought that up. 5 years ago, I registered a party in Ontario under the elections in Ontario called Canadians' Choice Party. It is the only party of its own kind that does not dictate any policy to any member, and members don't have the voting rights on the issue of the party. They have to represent their constituents. So if anyone who wants to get some information, I leave some business card. You can go to the website, all of the information is there. If anyone has question, I will be more than happy. And Paul said that we have to have the right to choose, and it's very interesting. If I go with my friend to a restaurant, for instance, we were in the restaurant and Paul chose to have a batter, the style of the fish, and I choose baked one. So I am pretty sure if I was one of those social justice warriors, I would object to his choice of battered fish because it's not fit with my choice. Anyhow.
Bahman, you said your party was registered.
It is registered.
Registered where? Federally or provincially?
No, provincially. We were hoping to do it federally, but the law with the federal registration is slightly different. We couldn't do it.
In other words, a contribution to your party would get a contributor a tax deduction.
Yes, up to the first 400, so you get 75% off. But if people are mostly looking for the next election to have more people to run, that is more important to go to their face. It's more important than money.
How does freedom of speech compare in Iran to Canada? And also, are there any countries on the planet today where you have total freedom of speech and free from taxes?
In Iran, I've not been in Iran for 30 years. I cannot make a judgment what it is now, although I just read the news the same as you do. It's not very good. But at the time of the Shah, for sure there was a stifling people. Even at the time of the Shah, which he was very modern king, and he had all sort of, there was no barka, no chaudhry, no, we had all of the programming of United States at the same time, was broadcast in Iran. We had very advanced technology at that time. Still, if you talk about government, but in the second part of your question about if there is, again, I haven't traveled to 193 countries myself, but I am pretty sure so far the Northern Europe, Scandinavian country, slightly are better, but now these days, in the last 2 or 3 years, because of the immigration issue, still they are going backward. That is my understanding about that. Even in England, right now, is in turmoil because of the, again, ghetto. It's a good point that you brought up. Earlier in discussion, I was talking about the Multiculturalism Act. That is the danger with the ghettoizing. If I do not come with you, let's say all of us living in this area, if we don't communicate with each other, I don't know what you think, you don't know what I think. That is danger of the freedom. If I stop people from thinking, you never know if he's a pedophile, or he's a radical, or he's just someone who wants to vent out. By having full freedom of speech, you know what you're facing in your neighborhood, in your city, in your country. By ghettoizing people, you make them to keep their original culture and thinking without exploring what is available outside, which we see it in the ghettoized areas in England, in Germany, in France, and so on. That is the danger we are facing right now. I'm not talking about if it is Islamic ghettoization or Jewish ghettoization. In fact, someone asked me what is your stance about Israel. I said, I have more important issue daily to think about than Israel. I have to pay my rent. I have to find my living. I have to go and deal with the idiots that they are running City Hall. I don't have time for Israel. So that is my stance for Israel.
Bahman, you mentioned that you got your medical education in Afghanistan.
7 years I was in medical school. I don't call myself doctor, but it was 7 years.
Now, we were talking in summer about this, and you indicated that Afghanistan in those days looked a lot different than it does today. Did women have to go around with burqas?
Well, of course, when I was in Afghanistan, I arrived in Afghanistan in 1978, and all of my classmates, first of all, we had class girls and boys in the university. Girls are walking with their skirt, with their heads all. Those who chose to have cover, it was their choice, or their family's choice. But people were walking around. In fact, if you go on YouTube and look at some of the footage from not only 1978, go even further to 1970. From the time of Zahir Shah over there, you see that the dignitaries of Europe go there and visit the king over there. They had women in the army. They had all sorts of the freedom for the women and the men as well. It was not equal, but nevertheless, it was a freedom.
You know, you asked about a country, but Libya, sorry to jump in, was such a country, right? They had no debt.
Libya.
Yeah, they had no debt. Every citizen had arms. Like Gaddafi had given arms to his own citizens, and then they accused Gaddafi of oppressing his people. Like if you're a dictator oppressing your people, would you arm your people and then walk freely among them?
In fact, Libya, as I mentioned, I was running in 2011, and in one of the debates with a rather powerful candidate called Bob Ray in Toronto Centre, we had a debate, and the question of the Libya at that time, which with involvements of the harbor and going and helping NATO to drop bombs and with airplanes. And I brought it up that in 2006, Paul Martin, who was the prime minister of the time, went to Libya, sat in the tent with the Gaddafi, broke bread, convinced him to invest in that, then was Petro-Canada, and I think it later on became Suncor, and convinced him to bring some of the money and invest in the banks in Canada as well as North America. And yet, later on, because of the investment of the private companies such as oil industry was in jeopardy in that area, they used taxpayers' money to go under pretext of people are distressed or oppressed by Gaddafi.
Oh yes, and they created ISIS.
You see, one of the things again, you see, everything comes back to freedom of speech. If they stifle people enough not to talk about anything, so anything that they broadcast, people accept it as a face value. Because you can't debate it. If the news comes and say, Mr. Harper sending the airplane to help poor Libyans, and if your neighbor knows what's going on in Libya, but because of the fear of someone label him of something and doesn't discuss that about the Libya, you never know, you think it's there, right?
But I mean, 2 years earlier, or even perhaps sooner, he was shaking hands, Gaddafi, with Obama.
Of course, all of them.
The public is seeing these images.
England.
A year later, he's the bad guy.
England.
Now, I'm not
Germany.
saying he's a good man. He did all kinds of crazy stuff.
We don't know.
But he turned over more terrorists on behalf of the United States than any other person, actually. He was he was trying to buy his way back into the good favor, right?
The only thing I think...
So their traitor is...
The only
don't
thing,
have any honor, nothing.
as a Canadian, as a person who lives in Canada, the only thing I think, and all of these issues of the international policies are distraction for people in general. Because if you sit and talk about Israel, if you sit and talk about Libya, if you sit and talk about India, what's happened, all of your attention or major part of your attention is being away from what's going on in your neighborhood.
I disagree, because they're using that to just, I mean, I'm not trying to be confrontational, but international...
Why am I involved for free speech?
International geopolitics is like a Hollywood production. I mean, what they are showing you is so far removed from common sense and reality. And what I'm trying to say is the stark contrast. It's like literally the Soviet Union. I mean, if you want to pick, I haven't lived under that system.
I think the establishment is slowly running into problems because of the internet, because there's so much free information on there now.
Well, there is a lot of crap on the internet.
I know there is, but there's a lot of truth on there too.
But I think they have disinformation, not to get too off topic, sometimes to cloud the truth, right? That way.
Well, that is the name of the game. You have to thank for the people like Freud, like Edward Bernier. These are kind of the people are the one that these people brought the PR system in 1925 or 24, and that has started, and that is why we are where we are. Any other question?
What can be done to change our system to become democratic? What can we do?
My purpose, again, collectively is very difficult. It's task of Hercules to my mind. However, I do not, I haven't thrown the towel in the ring, and I started this party because of participation. That is why on my talk earlier I asked you, talk, inform, whatever you know, get people engaged. Because if you talk with two people on the weekend when you have your dinner or barbecue, I am pretty sure two people go to their barbecue, they own and tell to other people. Get the younger people, or even older people, doesn't matter, engage in the electoral process. I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but if these people know that there is, or there are, other people challenging them, at least pay more attention to you. That is the minimum you can do.
What's the name of your party?
I am living the card they call Canadians, not Canadian. Canadians, that means the choice. That means the choice of the individuals, not the land.
Something in writing?
Oh yes, I am.
No, for everybody, if you had a pension.
Yes, I live this year. It's my business card, and it is my personal business card.
Will
The
you
party,
take part in the next election, any by-election, anything? Will you be there when you have a
I am there for last 5 years. So I am there.
I don't know if I know about it.
Nobody knows, because how many, for instance, let me put a quiz. How many registered political parties do we have in Ontario?
5.
15?
20. And Elections Ontario, I spoke to the Chief Electoral Officer of Elections Ontario in at least 3 different occasions, face to face, and I asked him specifically, when you send the card for the voting to the door, can you just print that there are 20 or there are more choices than 3 mainstream party available? It's not.
But to have 20 choices, that sounds democratic.
Sounds democratic if they get equal amount of the airwave, if they get equal amount of their representation in the debates.
Will they do that? And I guess not.
When
they have a meeting and talk, only 4 are invited.
Yes, I am one of those victims. Every time that I have an election that I am running, I have to fight with them to accept me as a member to the debates. In last 3 years, they refused to do it at all.
That's not democratic.
It's not, of course it's not. Why?
When will this change?
Don't, as I said, if people don't demand it, they don't do it. There are only a small cabal of the people, gangsters, they are running your government. By the way, another quiz. We had elections in Ontario just in 2014, and we had majority government. What is the percentage of the eligible voters vote for the majority government?
30%.
14. We have 9.25 million eligible voters in Ontario. If you get number of the votes of the all 58 MPPs who are making policy for you, they are slightly less than 14%. So even if it is democracy ruled by people, which is supposed to be at least 51, it's not there. Trudeau government elected by less than 18%. You were talking about apologizing about 6. Within first 3 months of his administration, he contributed over $2 billion to India. Now, how many people know that? How many people read newspaper? How many people digest that? How many people even sit and interpret that why $2 billion goes out to India?
I'm assuming for his own pocket.
You see, that is the problem with the governments is when they put a big number, $2 billion, like NGOs that they say, oh, we are helping Afghanistan with $20 million. By the time it goes to the Afghani, maybe it's not even 50 bucks. It's like a Russian dolls. They put a big doll in front of you. They said, you see how we are helping people. And then this goes to this administration, this goes to this NGO, this goes to this. By the time it gets to the public, that's a small one. There is a big money in the government in Canada. If it was not for big money, they wouldn't spend that kind of money to it. Do you know that each one of these parties, Conservative, NDP, and Liberal, spent in last election, federal election in 2015, something around $40 to $50 million each one of them. That does not include the amount of the money each candidate spent. That is just a part.
Is that controlled?
I'm sorry?
Is there any control about the...
There is control, but there is a rules, and the rules made by whom? By Elections Canada. Elections Canada gets the mandates from whom? From Parliament of Canada. Who makes the Parliament of Canada the rules? The same people. The cost of the election, just election alone, was about $500 million of taxpayers. So there is a big money in the government.
That's right.
So when you were talking about people, Mr. Warman, and or Kinsella or anyone like that, they are not after newspaper. They are trying to use the newspaper as the publicity stunt to get themselves inside that money circle. And by the way, when they sue the government, guess what? One way or another, you are going to pay.
Taxpayer.
I was speaking to someone 2 years ago in a meeting, just normal meeting, a potluck. I said, what do you do? She said, I am a lawyer. I said, which firm? She said, I am working for government. I said, okay, how much of the work is government? She said, well, we have about over 50,000 lawsuits right now. 50,000 lawsuits. 2 years ago, in Toronto Star, they printed that government of Canada has spent more than $1 million a day, including weekends, in prior 3 or 4 years for just outside consultation of the legal consultation, not including the in-office legal fees. So it's a big money for the accountants, lawyers, and crooks.
All of the above.
As simple as that. If you think they are sound policymaker, I haven't seen anyone. If you show me one, I will be more than happy to look at it. Anything that, and whenever there is a disgrace or a scandal, they just brush it off. I apologize. Hell with that $1 million went to the, for instance, the cancellation of the hydro. It was a mistake. Now, if I park my car by mistake on the street, I am being penalized with the $30, $40, $50 gas, and I cannot get away from it.
I missed one bill. They cut my gas off. One bill.
Or they don't register your car. How come for $50?
It's a long story. Luckily, it wasn't.
How come for $50 you are a criminal? For $1, $2, $3 billion, they walk and they keep continuing what they're doing?
Because they're politicians.
No, more than that, because people did not either vote or they didn't participate to tell them off.
I think we need to send them to the re-education camp. What do you think?
What, people? Or
No, the politicians, the politicians.
Any other question?
This is slightly off topic.
Sure.
But
I am multifaceted, not good. I'm not giving you a good answer. I'm just multifaceted.
She's hitting on you, Bob.
But this is, Donald Trump is creating waves in the United States because of his opinions.
Yes.
What is your opinion about him?
Well, I addressed my opinion about a year and a half ago. Donald Trump and Sanders and even Cruz, to that extent, they are outsiders of the establishment. However, oh yes, no, it's inside, but it's still the value.
Sorry, I can't tolerate that statement.
Oh, okay. Again, freedom of speech. Let me finish, and then you can disagree. The same way I disagree with a lot of. I'm just giving you my opinion. She asked about my opinion. Sure. These three are creating a different vibe in United States that it seems like a wake-up call for the public. However, from my perspective, I am just thinking personally differently. 8 years ago, we had the same wake-up call with the Obama movement. And then what's happened? People was really duped. This time, again, some people don't agree with me. I think Obama is distraction. They had a black president, now they want a female president. They want to shut people, to make the people shut up. We had a black president, now we'll give you the female president, and now, okay, go ahead.
I think what he means by outsider is Cruz is Canadian.
Yeah, and, no. It's just not to be rude, but to explain why I made that comment.
Yeah, I know.
And sincerely, some of the biggest funders of the Hillary camp, because Trump is such an outsider, there I agree with you, they're even willing...
I didn't say Hillary is outsider.
No, but they're willing to fund Cruz.
Of course.
Just not to have Trump.
No,
you know
no,
what I mean,
wait.
they're willing to do anything. That's what
let me clarify.
So that
Outsider,
explains to me that he's a total...
No, I understand.
guy.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify about outsider.
Freedom of speech is literally what I represent.
Okay.
Keep talking.
One at a time, please.
Okay. The outsider, I am not talking about the contributors. I'm talking about outsider of the GOP establishment. GOP establishment is not totally a slave of the donators. GOP establishment has different structure than Trilateral Union, try Rockefeller, try the Brzezinski, try the, what is that? Foreign relations.
Council on Foreign Relations.
Yes. These are different establishments that they fund anyone, by the way. Not only Hillary or Cruz, probably as soon as even Sanders get to the White House, they will fund him too. Because if people want to see what it is now. First of all, between now and November is a long way in the lifetime of the politics. It's huge time. All of these things that you are seeing right now, after May, is going to change. Maybe there are newcomers. Who knows? Maybe Mitt Romney comes. Who knows?
Yeah, but to call Cruz an outsider is simply wrong. That's
Well, that is your opinion. You are entitled to
I
your
have
opinion.
a lot of facts, and if you do even a little bit of Googling or whatever.
No, good for you. I say again.
But anyway, I'm not going to beat that.
No, you can discuss with me till tomorrow. I am not going to change
because there's
my
a lot
mind.
of people being misled. That's what I'm passionate about. A lot of Christian people get fleeced, right?
Let me explain. You see what you're doing right now. You are trying to tell me, or to tell everybody, that your opinion.
It's not an opinion.
No. Your facts.
Yes.
Is correct. That is what you want to say. That's correct?
If you give me a chance.
One second. Why don't we define, what do you mean, hang on, what do you mean by outsider?
Me, I said that outside of the GOP structure.
Oh, okay, so, no, because maybe you guys are saying...
No, I explained that, but he
No,
disagrees.
hold on.
But I don't,
Okay,
that's fine, it's his opinion.
Outside of the GOP, so in other words, Bush, insider.
Yes.
Okay, who were, in your opinions, the insiders that were running this time?
The only one that's running is the Kasich.
He's an insider.
He's inside.
Now, what do you base that on? I'm just curious.
No, because they are following the rules of the GOP when they are talking about the policy of the conservatives in that area.
You mean neoconservatism?
Well, I'm talking about GOP conservatives.
Okay, so how is Cruz not following?
Because Cruz gets some of his policies. First of all, he's radical. That GOP doesn't want to show to he's that radical. He gets it because, as he alluded, is get a lot of
evangelicals.
Promise from the, for instance, the military-industrial complex is a big promise. He wants to bomb blanket bombing, for instance, in the Middle East. That I am very well aware of that. But that is the part that we disagree, and we should agree to be disagree. And that is that you think that is the policy of GOP. I said no. That is the policy of the cabal behind the GOP.
You know, I'm not trying to win an argument here. I just.
Oh no, I'm not trying to be either.
Can we at least agree that Cruz is the Antichrist?
I think he's the Antichrist.
Okay, that we can agree.
I don't know about that. Okay.
I think he might be worse, if it's possible. But you know, just one final thing, not to beat it to death. But what I was saying is, he was not the preferred guy from the beginning. For sure, Jeb Bush and any other one of those guys.
Yes.
I totally agree with you.
Yes.
He was the but basically compared to Trump, they would practically.
No. I am. By the way,
right?
But by the way, I do not compare people with each other. Personally, not in my personal life, not in the politics. I never compare people with each other. Because your journey is different than his journey, than different than my journey. There is absolutely, philosophically, ideologically, socially, culturally, that is very illogical that you compare two individuals on any form or shape. And that is why earlier in the discussion I brought the issue of inner shadow. We all have inner shadows. Either we disclose it to the public or we don't, that is different stories. If it has a practical ramification or it has internal ramification, it's different story. I don't know what you think, you don't know what I think. Maybe you like my behavior or I don't like your behavior or vice versa. That is different story. But I do not see you how you think and you don't see how I think. You can only interpret what I do. Again, I am philosophical, by the way. Before anything that I get into politics, my personal life for the last 25 years is spent in the philosophy. And I am talking about practical philosophy. I'm not talking about reading Jean-Jacques Rousseau or reading just a Plato. I am talking about philosophy.
You know, like on the philosophy topic, right? I was talking about Christians, right? This is what I meant with this. A lot of Christians are coerced into supporting their enemy. Through evangelicals, especially. That's
yeah, but evangelicals aren't real Christians. They're Judeo-Christians, which is a bastardization of Christianity.
And I'm a Catholic. As a Catholic, we truly, up until Vatican II, understood what our religion was about. And then after Vatican II, it became like Catholicism is supposed to be the new Israel. That is actually what the original prophecy was, according to Catholic. I'm sorry if you guys aren't Catholic, but you know what I mean? So
can I revise that statement that you said that it meant a lot of Christians being coerced to it? People are being coerced from beginning of the time by a small group of the people. It's not monopolized by the Catholics or the Christianity. If you go to Islamic countries, it's the same thing. If you go to Jewish countries, the same thing. If you go to the Hindu countries, the same thing. If you go to the history of the mankind, from Babylonian all the way to Roman, to Saxon, to the Huns, and all the way to Vikings. Always a small group of the people get hold of the mass majority of the people. The same way that we are in today's shape. Maybe we don't feel like that when we are walking on the street, but again, we are not living in the tribal style of the living neither. You probably don't know your neighbors. Of course, I don't know about you, but I don't know you. I don't know even who is my left or right. Therefore, I can sit in my four-wall kingdom and start to imagine whatever I want.
And that's the modern way, actually. Come to think of it, that's exactly the point. If you actually think of the death of the classical, right, prior to 1900, the introduction of the moderns, what do? Bauhaus architecture. Take people out of the family unit, mix them up, throw them up in the sky, right?
And it is the new way of
it's the same housing blocks, consequent, by the way, coincidentally, that was introduced in the Soviet Union, colleges in the United States of America. You see the condominiums built all over the place, right? It's actually, there's an author by the name of E. Michael Jones. He has a book called The Living Machine, where he describes this a lot better than I'm able to. But he gets into, actually, social engineering, even physically, through architecture.
Social engineering has been around since 1800.
Yeah, but the modernist movement, if you...
Well, modern, as I said, it's
sure
only different style. We don't want to get to the
just the same way you guys talked about National Socialism in Germany. What did they do? They attacked modernity for a reason. They attacked abstract art. Why? Because they believed that philosophy was changing people's minds. And
by the way, before, because we are getting to the... Is there anyone else wanted to ask me something? I just wanted to make sure.
Well, you didn't answer her question about Trump. Like, what do you think of Trump?
I said that Trump...
You think he's a distraction like Obama?
No, on the contrary. He's a distraction, and I think the plan is to have Hillary to be elected.
Do you think is Trump sincere? Or do you think he's part of the plan?
No, he's sincere. But how this sincerity being used, that is different story.
Okay.
We have to. No, I did not mean that he's not sincere. What I meant, the structure of the game is set up such a way. By the end, let's say if he become nominee, there's two possibilities. Either he become nominee or he run as an independent. If he runs as an independent, Ross Perot, we remember around 1920, has no chance of getting some small portion of the vote. If he gets nominated, then it is between him and the Hillary, and the left has much more arsenal in his hand to win the election.
I hear you, but the popular support that Trump has.
We've got to wrap this up. Maybe you can carry on right afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This was a great talk, and thank you for coming out.
Anyone who wants to talk to
And if you want to take a look at the book table before we close it up.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yes, it is the card of the party, and it is my card. So, you know.
I'm looking for another part of the book.
Thank you.
And you know, this is all